What's up? It's Kaylee Cuoco. When it comes to travel, we all have a happy place. I just went to my happy place. I just went to Maui, and it was truly amazing. Priceline has always been about getting you to your happy place for a happy price with deals you really can't find anywhere else. Like up to 60% off select hotels in Costa Rica or 5-star hotels for 2-star prices in Cabo.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you're listening to, you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 169 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, Ben Bruce from Asking Alexandria, I want to make sure you check out the 3/4 sleeve retro 70s baseball jerseys that are now available in the online Mistress Carrie shop. You want them in traditional black? We got them. You want them in purple? Oh, we got those too. Just head to mistresscarrie.com and click shop, or check the links in the show notes of this episode. Ben Bruce from Asking Alexandria is my guest again this week on the Mistress Carrie podcast. Ben made his first appearance on the show on December 1st, 2021 on episode 78. And now that the band just released their new album, Where Do We Go From Here?, Ben came back on the show to talk about the new music and the Psycho Thunder tour with Asking Alexandria, The Who, Bad Wolves, and 0936. That show will be at the House of Blues in Boston on September 12th. Ben and I talked about the new music, touring, he and his family relocating back to England. We also talked at length about junk food and gardening, his parenting style, rock and roll history, and his love of the Beatles, constantly being in search of the perfect guitar tone, his childhood concert memories, his family pets, and we even talked about Dolly Parton. You can tell Ben absolutely loves all types of music, and we hit it off so well on episode 78 that he decided to come back on the show. So allow me to reintroduce you to Ben Bruce from Asking Alexandria. Mr. Ben Bruce, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's been a little while.
It has been. I had to look it up. You were last on the show on episode 78, which was December of 2021.
Wow. It's been a long time.
Yeah. We were celebrating your first ever #1 song.
Alone Again.
Yeah. And you told me that the Basses had taken you and your wife out to dinner to celebrate.
Yeah. I remember. Oh, man, you've made me a little bit sad now. I miss Eric. What a sweetheart he is.
So we spent a lot of time talking about you living in America and living in South Carolina, and now you're back in England.
Now I'm back in England, yeah.
How was that?
It was just the right time. You know, I think I was getting really homesick, which sort of spurred on one of my moves to Charleston originally. You know, I think Charleston was sort of very British influenced, and so it appealed to me. And then obviously Eric and Kelly living there, having friends out there was it, and it was closer to England. So I feel like in a way it was like a stepping stone to coming back, because obviously my wife's from the West Coast of America, so I kind of feel like Charleston was a halfway point. It was a stepping stone to get her used to something new and something fresh. And then now we've moved back home, and I think my parents are getting older. And my kids have missed so many years with my parents, me being away. I left home when I was a child, I was 16, and I've been away since then. And so it's just, time's precious. And I think you realize that the older you get, especially with my kids, they grow up. I feel like Faye was born yesterday. She's about to be 7. And so I'm watching my kids grow up, and I'm like, man, time really does fly by. And it just made me realize how much time I've missed with my mum, with my dad and my sister and all that. So, I presented the idea to my wife. I was like, how would you feel if we were to move back to the UK? And she said, you've been away from your family for a really long time. So it's my turn to move away and go and live somewhere new. So she was awesome. She was really supportive. And then her mum was like, well, I want to move to England. So her mum came with us anyway. So now no one has to be without, which is it's really nice.
Well, your wife's originally from Arizona, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time very different. And we spent a lot of time the first time I talked to you because you guys had just had another baby and it was your second baby of the pandemic. And now you've got this whole crew and they're adjusting to a whole other country. How was the move for the kids?
They love it. They're so happy. They're so happy to be able to see my mum, especially a lot more, and their cousin. So they're really happy. And then, the other thing was I was picking my daughter up, my oldest daughter, from school one day. And as I always was like, how was your day? Did you do anything exciting? What was your favorite part of the day? And she was like, oh, today was weird. And I was like, why was today weird? And she was like, well, we had to hide under the table because of a gun threat. And I was like, no, I can't do that. That like broke my heart, So coming over here, I think they feel a lot safer. And the fact that they're, like I said, my mum's around, their grandparents are around, their cousins are around. They've found the move. They've loved it, And it's funny because Finn moved over here and immediately his accent changed. Like he was ready for it. He was like, oh no, he speaks just like I do now, which is hilarious. The other ones have got a mismatched, strange hybrid accent going on, which I love as well. But, for me as well, it's important, even though we've moved back to England, that they still, maintain those roots as well. They are half American. And so we still we still celebrate American holidays over here. We still talk about Charleston and America as home, as well as here being home, and try and let them know, how lucky they are to have 2 homes. So it's been good. It's been really good.
What's one of the things that they got so used to in America, like food-wise, or something that you were like, we need to find a way to get that to the UK?
Do you know what's so funny? There hasn't really been anything except for like the garbage. Like they really miss flaming hot Cheetos, and things like that. So I'm like, oh, okay. And there's a shop down the road from us that has all American sweets, candy, all American crisps and stuff. So we just go over there and stock up on goldfish, flaming hot Cheetos, all the little snacks that they loved back in the States that they don't get here. So, which is nice, but it's twice the price because they've imported them to the US. So that's great.
I have friends from England, and when they come to the US, they sign up for these boxes of British snacks to get them so that they can have those tastes of home.
To get them through. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's all the things that you miss. My mum used to, all the years I lived in the States, my mum always would send me big care packages with stuff in it that I love that you can't get in the States. It's funny the sort of little comforts that go a long way.
And it is funny how those tastes get so ingrained in your memory, especially as a kid, that you have such strong memories attached to what adults sometimes consider insignificant things.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because we went to a shop the other day down the street, and it was I walked in. It was a shop called B&M, which is you don't have it in the States. It's a strange shop. It it's kind of, I mean, in a way, I suppose it's like a Target because you can get clothes, outdoor furniture, plates, food, all kinds of things. It's got a bit of everything in it. But I walked in and I went down the food aisle and I was like, oh, it was like I'd gone back. I thought I'd stepped through those doors and gone back in time to the 90s because all the food that's gone now that you don't see in supermarkets anywhere from my childhood, for some reason, this shop is still stocking. So I was like a kid at Christmas and my wife couldn't understand it. She was like, what's going on? Like, I've never heard of any of this stuff. And I was like, of course you haven't, but I have. And I just bought everything and I introduced it to my kids. I was like, this is what I used to eat when I was growing up. I can't believe I found it. And they were eating it and they were like, oh, it's all right. And I was like,
you're like, it's delicious. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Are you even mine? Unbelievable. But that just leaves more for me.
Well, I was wondering when I called to set this interview up and they were like, well, Bruce is available, but Ben's available, but the earlier the better. And those words I've never heard setting up an interview with a rock star ever. I was like, the earlier the better? Now I know why. It's because you're back in England.
Yeah, back in England. Also, I'm for me, is earlier the better. I do get up. We get up at like 6 or 7 in the morning most mornings because there's 4 kids running around. Like I wake up most mornings to either giggling and laughter and happiness from 4 children or screaming and arguing from 4 children. It's one of 2 ways. And I know which way my day's going to go, depending on which one of those ways I'm woken up. Today it was laughter and giggles and tickling. So nice.
It's 4 kids under 7. And the last time you and I talked, it was 4 kids under 5. What's the most ridiculous argument that you have had to break up with the kids?
Oh, it's every single day. There's some kind of strange argument. Today, the massive argument. My oldest daughter, who's about to be 7, and my oldest son, who's about to be 6, were arguing, like going red in the face, screaming at each other on how you pronounce water. Because I say water, just because of where I'm from in England, but obviously there's a T in water, so it's water. And Faye's yelling at him, going, "It's water." He's like, "It's water. It's water. No, it's water." And I'm like, guys, it doesn't matter. Everyone knows what you're saying. You say it how you want to say it. You say it how you want to say it. And I was like, but technically it's water. Just lazy accents, mate. And he was like, oh. So that argument was settled quickly. And then the other day, we were walking down the street. We'd gone to visit my mum for her birthday. And we're walking down the street. And my youngest son, he's 3. We're walking down the road and he walks past a lamppost. And I see him like look at it and carry on. And then he looks at it again. And he turns around, walks all the way back and just licks it. And then carries on walking. And I'm like, what are you doing? You can't do that. And my daughter's like, yeah, you can't do that. And my oldest son's like, yeah, he can. He just did. And she's like, no, you can't. It's dirty. And he's like, yes, you can. He just did it. I'm like, what is going on right now? My youngest son's just licked a lamppost and my other 2 kids are arguing about it. Bizarre. I wish I was a kid again. Those are the big worries in their lives.
Right. Can I lick that lamppost? Although, to be fair, you're in a rock band. Yeah. Well, to be fair, you're in a rock band. All of us have been around our friends that are musicians that have had enough to drink where they've been licking lampposts as adults. To be fair.
I may have licked a lamppost at some point. Yeah. Oh, well. Bless him. I couldn't be mad.
The last time you and I talked, the idea of traveling back and forth to England was a little more complicated because of the pandemic as well. Yes. And everyone was kind of frozen where they were. And it also made it really hard for you to do what you do, which is to be in a touring band. And we talked a lot about our shared love of gardening. Now that you're back in England, is there a place to have your beloved garden? Please tell me yes.
Yeah, it's so funny. All my friends make fun of me now because all I do is garden.
I will not make fun of you for that.
I'm planting flowers and trees and bushes, and I got more trees yesterday. I got 2 mature olive trees, and two mature climbers, and I'm obsessed with it. I love it, and it's so like fulfilling to watch them grow and flourish. And I'm like, oh, and I try and plant since we've moved into our new house. I've dug up a lot of the back garden because we live on what we call out here a village green. So you open our front door, and there's just in our village, there's a big green area where the kids can run and play and people walk their dogs, and there's a playground. So we've got that literally 2 steps outside of our front door. So the back garden, I'm like, the kids don't need that much of it. So we've dug up a lot of it and planted wildflower seeds so that we can try and sort of attract bees and butterflies and have somewhere, because I feel like having just a big flat lawn, it's not the greatest, is it? It's a lot of upkeep. It takes a lot of water. So I've just been out here watching the flowers grow, and I don't know. I'm so old. I'm getting so old.
I don't think it's an age thing, though. I think that so many people that are younger are getting into gardening because they are environmentally conscious, and it is something that, especially during COVID, it was one of the only things you could do. And I think that a lot of people discovered it and then fell in love with it. Like, I always grew up doing it because it was a heritage thing with my Sicilian grandfather that they did in the old country.
Yeah.
And my other grandfather, who at some point his family came from England. We haven't been able to really trace it back how far. But after the war, when he came home from World War II in Korea, it was like a thing that he did. And so always having
therapeutic.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of people that during COVID just realized, wow, this really is why my grandparents did it.
Yeah,
and I do feel better doing it.
Yeah, it's funny because I've got one of our next door neighbors. I don't know their exact age, but they're quite old. I think they're probably in their 70s. And I talk to them all the time because they're always outside gardening. And, she in particular, my next door neighbor, she's been gardening for her whole life, she said. And so she's always helping me. Whenever I get like plants out, she comes over with her hat and on, and she's like, she's ready to go. And I'm like, okay, where do we plant these? What do we do with these? It's so funny. It's just such a nice thing to do, a nice way to spend your time. And it's nice to show my kids as well, like how important things like that are. And when all the butterflies and everything are in the garden, I get to tell them about, different pollinators and stuff. And I feel like that's, it's just a good thing for them to be aware of and to have.
Well, to have a connection with where your food comes from, since you can't live on hot Cheetos alone.
You can't. My wife has tried. You can't. Can't do it.
It was also a really good icebreaker, I bet, because when you move into a new neighborhood, I remember when I moved into mine, the purple-haired rock radio DJ moving into the neighborhood for a moment had that scratch the needle across the record thing in the neighborhood. It was like, here we go, the neighborhood's gone to shit. So I imagine there was a little bit of panic when the tattooed rock guitar player moved into the neighborhood for those neighbors next door.
Possibly. Maybe. I don't know. I'd never really thought about it. They've always been super. Well, we actually moved in before they did. So they were moving into our territory.
Oh.
But they were, they were nice. They had some, I remember the first time we met them, it was the middle of the night. We had only just moved in. We were new to the area as well. And they moved in maybe a week after us. And so we were trying to keep, because we flew our pets over from the States. So we were trying to keep my cat indoors to get acclimated as much as possible. You're supposed to keep them indoors for a few weeks, you know what I mean? So they can get their scents and everything. And she got out one night and I was like, oh my God, we've only been here like 2 weeks. It's pitch black. She doesn't know the area. So I was freaking out and I was nervous. So I was like, outside trying to get her in, and she was running away from me and going between cars because she's an outdoor cat. She loves it. And I remember she went under my neighbor's car. And so I'm like, okay, I've got a big cardboard sort of poster roll that has come over from the States with a poster in it. And I'm trying to usher her around and herd her and shepherd her in a direction. And she goes under my neighbor's car. And it's got to be about 10 o'clock at night.
So you look like the crazy guy right now.
So crazy. And I was in my boxers because I was just going downstairs to check the doors and everything before I got into bed, and she ran out, and I was like, oh. So I'm outside in my boxers and a pole, cardboard pole, and I'm trying to wash this cat around, and my wife comes out, and I'm like, she's under the neighbor's car. I'll stand here in case she comes this way, and I can catch her. And you go in and get her. So my wife goes under the neighbor's car, and we're like trying to get the cat. And the light goes on in our neighbor's house, and they both come outside, and that's the first time they've met us. My wife's under their car, and I'm in my underwear with a cardboard tube, and I'm like, and they were like, and they just looked at me for about, it felt like 5 minutes, but it must have been about 5-10 seconds, really quick. And they went, your cat's under the car. And I went, thank God you realize that that's what's happening. I'm so sorry. We're not always like this. We are, but this is an awkward way to meet. But since then, they've been lovely.
I can only imagine the conversation between the two of them when they went back in the house.
I can only imagine the conversation prior to opening the door. Should we open the door? What are these people doing under our car? And what were the other neighbors doing? How many people were watching us in the neighborhood? I just imagine them all there with their popcorn, just watching, laughing, having a good time. There's been so many things that have happened to me like that since moving into this neighborhood. One of which, because like I said, we live on a village green. So all the houses are around this big rectangular piece of land. So you can see. And one morning it was Christmas, and my dog is an English Mastiff. She's huge. She's really big. She weighs more than I do. And she's a big scaredy cat. She's lovely, but she's a big scaredy cat. And I took her out to go to the toilet. She doesn't like going outside because she doesn't like loud noises and stuff. And I took her out, and a big bang happened, and she had just finished taking a dump. And I was like going to pick it up, and she took off. And I went straight into her dog shit, and she just dragged me through the village green. I end up like getting onto my ass and onto my feet, and I'm like water skiing behind this dog with her shit streaked all the way up my t-shirt. And there's like neighbors galore. And I'm like, well, this is their Christmas present from me, and it's never going to get any better than this. They're going to talk about this for the rest of their lives. And I finally get her home, and my wife's like, what happened? I was like, don't ask me that. I need to go. I need to go and shower. I need to go do something to cool off. It was like something you'd see in a movie. Couldn't believe it.
Now, I've never lived in England, but I've visited. Obviously, growing up in New England outside of Boston, I understand the concept of things being smaller, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a family of 4 and this giant mastiff who are used to living in South Carolina, where I would think there's a little more elbow room.
Yeah.
And now you've got everybody back in England. How has that adjustment been, adjusting to the limited space? And what were you like, we can't take this with us. This cannot go. There's no room.
We didn't bring a lot of stuff with us. We told our friends, whatever you guys want, you guys can have. And 2 of our friends turned up they had 3 children. They had 3 triplet daughters. And they were always around at our house, and they came around one day with a U-Haul instead of their car, and they just packed up all of our stuff and took it back to their house. And I was like, well, that sorts that out. But do you know, when we were in South Carolina in Charleston, we had 13 acres of land, and we had a massive house and a pool and all this stuff. And we've come back home, and it's a small house. It's like a small Victorian sort of terraced house like you get in the UK. And everyone was like, you're really going to struggle, you're going to miss the space, there's a lot of you. But the thing is, every house we've ever had, and even that last one, which was spacious, we've never used any of it. As a family, we're always together, so we were always just the 6 of us. We're always on the same sofa on top of each other watching TV, or we were always hanging out. So we were never really separated anyway. So moving into like a smaller house with a smaller area hasn't affected us at all, because it's just how we've always spent our time anyway. And the actual thing that's nicer about out here that we found is the States is so big. So you drive everywhere, you get in the car and you go places. Whereas here we walk everywhere, or the kids ride their bikes. So, you know, we have a cafe in the village, or the shops are across the street, or the local pub is down the street, or the playground's down the street. So we walk everywhere. And I feel like that's been really nice for the kids too, because even though we had 13 acres of land in Charleston, there were alligators, there were, you know, bobcats, there were poisonous, venomous snakes. So they didn't really get to roam around everywhere as much as we would have liked them to, which is why we bought the land. We were like, they're going to love this, not really thinking about all those things. Whereas here, you know, they get to spend a lot more time outdoors. So it's not really been a huge adjustment like everyone was sort of telling me it was going to be. People were genuinely going, you're going to miss the space. And thankfully, we haven't had to worry about it.
I talked to Luke Spiller from the Struts recently, and we were talking about that never-ending ping pong match over the ocean for rock and roll between America and the UK, and how each generation of rock and roll kind of feeds back over the ocean. His theory I thought was really interesting, and I want to see what you think about it. He said the UK produces the greatest bands and America produces the greatest solo artists. Now, of course, there are exceptions, like an Elton John or an Aerosmith. But he was like, if you really think about it, it's true more often than not. And I thought about it, and I was like,
possibly. I like to think.
So I wanted to know what you think about it.
Yeah, maybe that's an interesting one, because you have I feel like the UK has a lot of fantastic solo artists as well, though. When you think about sort of Freddie Mercury when he went solo, Elton John was a great example. We have Harry Styles went solo and is incredibly successful. We've got Adele, Lewis Capaldi. There's a lot of sort of solo success out here as well. The thing that I noticed the most about music in general, not just rock and metal, in the UK compared to the US is, I think over here we strip it back more. There's a lot of artists that are just go out there with an acoustic guitar or a piano, and that's it, and that's what it is. And then what I think the States do is they sort of embellish it. So there's more embellishment in American artists than there is. I feel like, if you compare the first sort of metal band in, Black Sabbath or Motorhead, and then fast forward to bands like, I don't know, Metallica even, there was just a lot more embellishment when you went and listened to Metallica, with all the crazy fast solos and all the different sections. And it's just that's what I think I find interesting is that's where it changes to me. The UK is a little bit more stripped back, dialed back, and the US is a little bit more pizzazz.
It seems like that as a culture too, not just with music.
Yeah, actually, when you say that, it is very much the case. I mean, I think about even small things I've noticed, like when you go out in the States to a lot of places to meet up with friends or have food or grab drinks or whatever, there's TVs sort of dotted about everywhere. There's TVs and so much stuff going on. And when you go out here, there's none of that. It's more stripped back. It's just people talking and eating food. Whereas there is, it's probably is a cultural thing. The cars are flashier and bigger. The food's bigger. There's more lights. There's more TV. It's just that, and I think it's just a big cultural thing. It's funny. I'd never thought of it like that before. How that lends itself to music as well. It's that's an interesting thing to ponder.
The last time you and I talked, we had a very long discussion about the search for guitar tone. And we talked a lot about technology and the future of rock and roll. And it's funny that we're having this conversation because we were talking about the future of rock and roll, almost for it to survive, needing to strip it all back and go back to the roots of the art form, which is what a lot of newer rock bands are kind of doing, is rediscovering the simplicity of rock and roll.
Yeah. And I still think that's so important, you know, and I often find myself sat listening at home to the Beatles and thinking, or like even Led Zeppelin or something, and thinking, man, what would people think now if this got released now? And unfortunately, I think people will go, oh, this sounds terrible, and they wouldn't give it the chance. But that's why I think it's so important. And there are a lot of musicians doing it now, sort of stripping it back a bit. I mean, we did it on our previous album, See What's on the Inside, you know, and I think we're so much better off for it. We learned a lot more about our instruments, about songwriting. And actually, it was really difficult to do it because you're not hiding behind things. And in that regard, we came out with an even bigger respect than we already had for music and for rock music and for musicians and instrumentalists and stuff. And so, you know, I think it's important to sort of remember that and go back and listen to. I think that's such a crazy thing. The fact that you can go back and listen to how poor the recording quality was a lot of the times back in the, you know, 50s, 60s, but the songs still today, we're listening to them and the songs stand the test of time. And I think that speaks volumes as to, you know, the quality of songwriting and musicianship. And it's important, you know, and I really would encourage a lot of musicians and people to do more of that if they can. Oh, he's always popping in.
He did last time too.
Yeah, he's always about somewhere.
Hello.
You okay?
I got fruity chewies.
You got fruity chews.
Yeah.
Right. Can you wait inside for me? I won't be too much longer. Okay, now we'll take Mum to doctors. Got a bug on your shoulder. It's gone. Can you wait inside for me? Are you gonna wait there? All right, mate. Very good. Shh. Be quiet now, okay? Thanks, buddy.
He does have an English accent already.
Does a little bit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's funny. He's hilarious.
Well, what's really funny about those old recordings is that, like the Beatles, for example, they were literally on the forefront of technology for their time. That was avant-garde stuff.
It was. And they spent a lot of time capturing those recordings and learning the songs. I mean, I've got so much Beatles stuff, records and books, and I've spent so much time studying them. And I've got recordings of them. They're like, okay, this is, you know, Strawberry Fields, take 57. And you don't do that anymore. There's no 57 takes of anything because you just edit it and you fix it and bing, bang, boom, it's done. And that blows my mind as well. So they were at the forefront of it, but it took a lot to capture those sounds. And when you listen to them and compare them to the sounds you can capture now with a lot less effort, it's pretty crazy to see how fast music and technology sort of progressed. And so it really is a short period of time.
You and I spent a lot of time talking about gardening last time and a lot of time talking about the Beatles. And then this Peter Jackson thing came out where we were watching Paul McCartney's process and watching the Beatles write songs in color.
Yeah.
And every musician I know watched that and was like, oh my God, that's how it's done. That's what it feels like in my head. Did you have that experience watching that?
Of course, you know, and then that just led me to go down the rabbit hole in my own mind of, you know, the way that they created and crafted these songs and the way that they then, you know, worked at them to a point where they were happy to share them with the world and sort of where those songs live in our world now. And I'm just sat there. And my biggest thing is they did all this. They created all of this in that way. And it was incredible. But their career was this long. It was so short-lived, which is something, when you think of the Beatles, you're like, yeah, they've been around for 60 years. They've been around forever. And it's like, no, the Beatles were around for the tiniest.
It was like, what,
tiniest
7.5
time.
years, something like that they
Yeah,
actually recorded
if
music
that.
together?
If that, yeah. And it was crazy. And I'm just like, that makes it even more insane to me. And they just had it. That group of people together just had whatever the magic source is, that they found it, and it worked, you know, and it didn't need to work for a long time because it's lasted forever, and it will last for decades on.
When you and I talked last, you talked a lot about working on a defining sound for your guitar. With this new record coming out, did you make any steps forward in that journey for you? And are you satisfied with where you're at now, or are you still charting a course forward?
This album was a completely different take for us, and it was more about the feel after the fact, like what's the energy coming back out of the speakers. So whereas on the last one I was searching so hard on perfecting tone, and I wanted it to sound like my guitar on the last record was singing. Like if it was a clean tone, I wanted it to sound like someone was whispering to you, and I just wanted that from my guitar. Whereas this time I didn't focus as much on the tone, more of the energy that it fed you coming out the speakers. So sometimes there were tones that just on their own, for instance, in Bad Blood, it was quite an ugly tone. It didn't sound nice to my ears, but that was exactly what it needed. So when it's come out the speakers and it's just going Dylan, 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 I wanted it to sound ugly, and it did sound ugly. So, you know, I spent less time on tone and more time on what do I want the feeling and the energy coming out to be. And so it was just a different process, you know. And so for me, when I'm playing at home, I still love messing around with tone and stuff like that. But it's hard to, I don't know. It was just a different journey, this new album, I think.
After you and I talked to Slash, and I said, you know, you have one of the most recognizable guitar tones in all of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And he actually was taken aback by that. And he was like, that's a huge compliment, because every guitarist is on a constant journey for tone. And hearing Slash say that to me, I was like, dude, you already found it. Like, you're Slash.
Yeah, you found it in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's funny though. It's one of those things, isn't it, that makes you wonder. Maybe he wasn't happy with that tone, and maybe it's not the tone that we all fell in love with. Maybe it was the record, you know. And it's like that record is so big, and that tone of his guitar on that record is synonymous with that massive record. Maybe he's there going, oh, but I could make the tone so much better now. You know, for him, maybe it's frustrating, but I'll never hear. It's like you said, Ben, you're crazy. He is bonkers. For him, I feel like, you know, I'll always listen to that record. When you say Slash, immediately, just like you said, I hear his tone. It's immediate. Like, yep, that's what Slash sounds like. But then you got to think from his perspective. He's like, he did that so long ago. It's got to be frustrating. He probably does want to experiment with more tones and stuff. So it's just one of those things.
I just saw them in Boston last night. They played Fenway Park in a torrential downpour. I mean,
that's amazing.
I have not been that wet, not swimming, since Woodstock 94. Soaked to the bone.
Did they play November Rain?
Yeah, but by that time it wasn't raining anymore.
Oh.
But what was crazy is he hit one note of Sweet Child of Mine. Everybody knew exactly one note.
Yeah.
And everybody knew exactly what was going on.
What was coming. Yeah. See, and that's special. That doesn't happen. You know, there's a million great guitar players out there, and you can recognize their sort of sound. You know, for me, like, I don't know, Eric Clapton off the top of my head, I can tell his sound from a mile off, but not his tone. You know, there is a forever pursuit for guitar players and tone. And I think Slash is one of the few examples where, yeah, like you say Slash and you hear his guitar, and that's pretty spectacular. You know, there's only a few. Dimebag Darrell, I think, also had a tone. I was like, yeah, I hear that, and I know it's Darrell. But that also might have been just his style of playing too, was so instantly recognizable. But Slash, yeah, he has the most instantly recognizable tone, I think, of any guitarist that's ever lived.
It wasn't raining during November Rain, but Guns N' Roses now is playing Slither from Velvet Revolver, which is a song I love. And
that's cool.
Which I thought was really cool because we're in the era of Nice Axl.
Yeah.
Former Axl would never have done that, but Nice Axl. And what was crazy is that they started playing it and it started raining. And by the time the chorus came in, Here Comes the Water, it just poured and everybody was dancing and getting naked. Like, I will remember that moment. I've been to a lot of shows over the years. I'll remember that moment for the rest of my life. It was this magical moment where the crowd, everybody was just wet and they were like, okay, this is what we're doing. And it was awesome. But
that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And like you said, you'll remember that forever. You know, even if you've seen Guns N' Roses 100 times prior to that, that'll be the one.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a Guns N' Roses song. That's what's crazy.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, that's part of what makes, you know, these things so magic, is that the atmosphere reacts with what's happening on stage, and that can sometimes be the best part of the show, I think.
Is there a moment out of all of the shows you've ever been to as a fan that strikes you like that? A moment where you were just like, this is amazing, and you'll just never forget it?
For me, I do have one, and it's so small and it's so simple. But I remember I went to go and see Machine Head when I was really young. I was really young. I must have been, I don't even know at this point, maybe 14, something like that. And I went to go see them. And I walk out, I leave, I get out the car, my mom drops me off, and I'm so excited. And I'm at the front of the stage and I'm waiting for Machine Head to come on, and the stage goes black and you just hear and I was like, oh, and the whole crowd erupts. And I remember the crowd surging, and I was like, I'm gonna die. I was so skinny and I was so small, and this massive biker dude puts his arms around me and he just pushes off the barricade, and he holds me back. And I'm like, holy cow, this is amazing. So the Machine Head walk out, and they're walking across the stage, and Rob points at me and he goes, and I'm like, holy cow. And I'll never forget it, you know. And it's one of those moments where I was like, this is insane. I've got this strange man taking care of me. And so I had like my own section after that in his arms. And I just got to march and bounce up and down, and it was one of the greatest things ever, and I'll never forget it, you know. And I think I've had a lot of good experiences at shows, but that one for me, you know, the lights going down, hearing the beginning of the set starting, and that guy, that strange man, just making sure I was safe and everything, the band coming out and acknowledging me, it was a magical moment.
And now that you're getting ready to go out on the road again, every show you play, you have the opportunity to give that moment to a young fan as well.
Yeah, that's been one of my greatest things, my most favorite things about touring. And, you know, it's got to the point where I'm not going to be able to do it really anymore because of my family situation and my wife losing her vision and all that stuff. But so for me, you know, there's been so many moments throughout my career like that where I'm like, that's magic, you know, even as far as parents bringing their young kids to our show and me being able to stand there and watch them create memories together that's going to last for them, you know. And it's like, that's a magical thing for me is you're creating memories with, for, the fans and the people in the audience, and you know, like just like you and that Guns N' Roses thing and me and the Machine Head thing, people walk away with those memories and they last a lifetime. And you know, I think you can't be buried with money and possessions and cars and houses and stuff, but when you are buried, you're put down there with those memories, you know. And I think they're the only things we can hold on to forever, and being able to do that for so many years on so many stages in so many countries, it's a privilege, isn't it, really? I mean, you grow up hoping one day you could do something like that. The fact that I've been able to do it, you know, it's never goes unnoticed for me, just how lucky I've been sort of over the years to be able to be in that position. So it's been pretty magic.
Just so I don't misunderstand, so are you saying that you're not going to be touring with the band now, or just you understanding that in the future, you know, you're not going to be able to?
No, I don't think I'm going to be able to. I won't be touring with the band, at least for now. I've just got, you know, with the kids. Like I said, my wife was born with glaucoma, and she underwent multiple surgeries when she was born, and they brought back her vision a little bit. But over the years, it's been deteriorating, and she's gone completely blind in one eye now, and her vision in her remaining eye is not very good at all. So she's not allowed to drive. So I'm the only one that can drive the kids to school, you know, drive them to doctor's appointments, drive her to doctor's appointments, go get, you know, shopping and do all the things that you need to do. And to leave her home unable to do those things with 4 children while I disappear off for weeks and months at a time, you know, it's just not, it does sound like hard work, doesn't it? It is hard work. And, you know, it's just got to the point where you have to realize, you know, I've been so fortunate, like I said, to be able to spend so many years, thank you, mate, doing stuff like that. But, you know, I'm at a different place in my life now, and I have to take care of my family and take care of my kids and put their needs first. So, you know, maybe it's not forever, you know, but for now, it's definitely one of those things where they, you know, they need me home. I have to be home. I have to be here for them. And, you know, which is good. You know, it's a new thing, a new chapter, and it's an important one. You know, and like we said in the beginning of this, time flies by so fast. I don't want to wake up one day and have missed it all. You know, and not be there. And it's you know, I'm sure a lot of people go, oh, that's awesome. You know, your kid gets to go, oh, my dad's a rock star. Like, that's so cool. But I'd much rather my kids grow up and go, my dad was always there. You know, he was always there when we needed him. He was always there for us. And so, you know, that's just a decision I've had to make. That's the best decision for my family. And you know, it's a tough one. It's a sad one, but it's the right one.
But you're still a member of the band and working on music and all of that stuff still. I don't want people to be like, oh my God. No, of course not. You know, and I think the thing for me is I love writing music, and I'll always love writing music, you know, and you know, I've been sat here now writing new Asking Alexandria songs still, and talking to the guys about the new songs and everything like that. So, you know, it's just for me, leaving home, like I say, and leaving my wife to raise four kids isn't it's not possible, you know.
It doesn't sound like you like war at all.
Well, you get super sad when I leave, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now you're all sweaty. You don't like getting sweaty.
I do get very sweaty on tour, you're right.
You don't like it.
Hang on a minute, okay? I'm nearly done. Patience, you've been so patient.
I can't count the times on the show that there's been a cameo appearance from a member of the family or one of the animals or both. It happens all the time.
Yeah, it's bonkers. It's always Finn. He manages somehow to always make his way in. And I sit here, and I didn't do it today, but because I know
where to put the picture. I was the one that know where to put the picture.
You did put the picture up, so thank you. But I came in here the other day, and I was like, I'll lock them out so they can't come in and disturb me. And so I locked it. I flicked it up, only to realize that there's also a flick on the outside, and that's how you get into the building, into the studio from out there. So I didn't actually do anything, did I? Just pretty clever. Not on my behalf, mate. You are very clever. But can you give me 2 minutes? Yeah? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, the last time we talked, you were working on songs for this new album that's now just coming out. Where do we go from here? And then the band going out with The Who, with Bad Wolves, with 0936. And now you're saying you're already working on new music again.
Yeah, I feel for me I feel like that's just been the standard way of working for me since this band started. I think because once you've created an album and you've written it and you've recorded it, all the other stuff has to happen on the back end. You know, the labels figuring out when it's coming out, they're putting it together, it's getting mixed, it's getting mastered, there's artwork being done, there's merch being made, and I'm sat there going, I like writing songs. So while they're doing all that, I just keep writing, and then they're like, okay, it's time to release the album. I'm like, oh, well, I have another one. So
it looks like it might run in the family too, because Finn just grabbed your guitar back there.
I know. He's always playing guitar. He wants a drum kit.
Oh man!
He wants a drum kit. He wants to be even louder than he already is somehow.
Well, before I let you go, a question has come up on the show that I have to ask every musician now. I will preface it by saying I call it the Geezer Butler question because Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath came on the show and we were talking music and all this stuff, and he does a lot of work rescuing animals and supporting animal rescues. And he lets it slip that he's got 13 cats and 5 dogs. That's a lot. That's the look I had on my face too. And I asked him, how do you keep track? Like, how do you name that many animals? And Geezer Butler says to me that he names all of his animals after gangster rappers. And I have never laughed so hard in my life. And so now I have to ask every musician where they got their animals' names from, and I blame it on Geezer Butler.
That's funny because my Mastiff I was talking to you about earlier, she's called Dolly Parton, after Dolly Parton, because she has like this white butterfly logo in her fur here. It looks just like Dolly Parton's logo. And my wife's absolutely obsessed with Dolly. It's like her idol. She loves Dolly. And so, yeah, we have this massive, she's a beautiful English Mastiff, but she's huge and she's slobbery and she's got the most beautiful name and she's called Dolly.
Dad, how are we going to teach you how to handshake? Well, the handshake that Dolly destroyed. How are we going to teach you how to handshake all over?
I'm not too sure, mate. I'll let you know in about 5 minutes.
Well, you and your wife will have an album that you can listen to in common because Dolly's got a rock record coming out and there's 2 Beatles on it.
She got the Beatles back together. How has she done that? She's the only one that could have got the Beatles back together. The remaining Beatles are... I could not believe it. I was like, wow, if anyone could do it, it's Dolly. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and they covered Let It Be. And
I know, which is my all-time favorite Beatles song. One of my all-time favorite songs, actually.
Rumor has it she tried to get Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, and that didn't happen. So that's the rumor. I don't know if it's true, but that's the rumor.
So that's where the line is drawn. That's who she can't get back together.
That's the limit of Dolly Parton's powers, right there.
Yeah, that's a shame. But I'm just happy about the Beatles. I can't believe that. When I read that, I was like,
I know, me too. Well,
insane.
I'm so bummed I'm not going to see you in a few weeks here in Boston on the tour. But I'm so glad that we got to reconnect again. Congratulations on the new album. And
thank you so much.
Fingers crossed, it looks like you're going to have another #1 song on your hands if things keep going the way they're going.
Fingers crossed. It's climbing. It's quickly. Climbing very quickly. So we'll see.
All right.
Fingers crossed.
I'll let you go so you and Finn can go jam on the guitar and play with the dog. It was so good to see you.
Thank you so much. You too. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.
There he is, Ben Bruce from Asking Alexandria. The new album, Where Do We Go From Here, is available everywhere. You can see the band touring with The Who on the Psycho Thunder Tour with Bad Wolves and 0936. And if you want to see them September 12th at the House of Blues in Boston, click the link in the show notes of this episode. While you're there, you'll also find the link to his first appearance on episode 78 and the link to this episode's corresponding playlist, which features a bunch of Asking Alexandria music and all the other artists and songs that we referenced in the interview. You'll also find Ben Bruce's social media links, all the links for Asking Alexandria, and all the links for me and the Mistress Carrie podcast. And that includes the online Mistress Carrie store. Don't forget, you gotta check out those 70s-inspired three-quarter sleeve baseball jerseys. They come in black and purple, and they rock. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday, plus every weekday you get the Sit Rep, which boils down all of the day's rock news and entertainment updates in around 5 minutes. Join me live every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern on my official Facebook page for my video show, Cocktails in the War Room, and you can always find me on the radio. The Mistress Carrie podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
It's always the right time deal.
Hey, want to go to Mickey D's for lunch?
Ooh, let's go now.
But it's not lunchtime yet.
If we're going to McDonald's, it's always the right time.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that.
There's a deal for every lunch hour at McDonald's.
Now's the time to get 2 for $3.99. Mix and match a 4-piece McNuggets, a McDouble, a McChicken, or a hot and spicy McChicken. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.